To begin with, we have this concept of the people from other planets as little green men. Are they green from what you know? Are they all the same?
Unfortunately, they're not so benevolent.
A fucking alien.
What's good? What's good? Welcome to 51 here with host Jimmy. Another day in the jungle. Give us a like, subscribe, and also become part of our community here in goldenboxing.com for more news and stories. And let's get to this video. All right, so pretty much I did a video in Spanish yesterday about an interview that I saw by Demetrius Andrade. He was giving PBC an interview where they were asking him a lot of questions and questions related with his career in general. Something that stand out in that interview was two things. One was that PBC, at least the people who were working in PBC, the podcasters, confirmed what I've been saying for a long time, that Demetrius Andrade was a fighter that nobody wanted to fight because he has a very awkward style, a style that not a lot of fighters want to get in the ring with. So that was confirmed yesterday. And it's interesting how PBC said that, because one of the fighters who was actually avoiding him for a long time was Jermall Charlo. He was avoiding Demetrius Andrade, and they're admitting now that he has a few fights with PBC, that he was avoided. So that was interesting to note. Now, Demetrius Andrade has said in the interview that he called out Jermall Charlo and said that we should get this fight going. This is a fight that's going to be important for our legacy. I think, as I always said, that Demetrius Andrade always tried to push for that fight against Charlo, but Charlo never wanted to fight. He was going to fight his brother Jermall, but because of the situation with Start Promotions back in 2013, and the fact that Demetrius Andrade was trying to get a better deal in Rock Nation, they never really left the contract to get the fight done, but because he moved to a different promotional company, everything went down. And after that, Jermall got angry with Demetrius Andrade and he didn't want to fight him again. But the truth is that Demetrius Andrade always wanted to fight Jermall Charlo and Jermall in 154. And even if that contract didn't work out, they could still make the fight happen. Just for example, right now we have Usyk and Tyson Fury, who left the negotiations, who are supposedly going to fight, and then they're restarting the negotiations again. We saw the same with Terence Crawford and Errol Spence. We've seen the same with Manny Pacquiao, and also Errol Fleming with the Jr. They made the fight happen. We've seen this time and time again when they don't get it with a deal or there's a breach of contract, but then eventually they make the fight. So at the end of the day, they could have fought, and Demetrius Andrade did pursue the fight with Jermall and Jermall. He went to the press conference to fight them, but they didn't want to give him the chance back, and I think that was a big mistake. So either way, apparently Andrade said that I got in contact with Charlo. I called him. We were talking for an hour, and I told him that we need to make this fight happen. So it was Andrade who initiated contact, which is always a good sign, a sign that he's not afraid. So that's great news. Apparently, this could be a possible fight. That will be great. Jermall Charlo and Andrade. Jermall, though, has been very inactive. Honestly, I don't know. I don't think he'll beat Demetrius Andrade. I think Demetrius Andrade is way too much for him. But I think it will be a great fight. And that would also be important because these Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin ducked these two fighters. So that will make it very interesting. Because if Andrade were to beat Charlo, now it gives them more option to see that fight against Canelo Alvarez. But Andrade said in the interview that he doesn't expect that Canelo Alvarez is going to give him the opportunity because he already ducked him for an undisputed championship and won 60th. Excuse for a lot of Canelo fans as well. His mandatory was Derevchenko. What they don't tell you, though, is that yes, it is true that Derevchenko was the mandatory for Canelo Alvarez for the IBF. However, he had 9 months to make the fight prior to becoming the mandatory. And Canelo, instead of fighting Derevchenko, instead of fighting Andrade, he fought Rocky Fielding for an interim championship in the WBA, if I'm not mistaken. And on top of that, he gave him a rehydration clause. Nobody wants to talk about, but he had 9 months to make that undisputed fight for $40 million. It's funny how that works. Now, another interesting part of the deal is that he was asked about David Benavidez. Now, I've been in contact with David Benavidez. I made an interview with him. I also interviewed Andrade before. And I'll speak about a different fighter in a second. But apparently, he said that he wants that fight. He says that they signed that contract to fight him already. So that's part of the PBC contract as well. So it seems like he wants to get that fight as well. And another one, and that's great news because I would love to see David Benavidez versus Demetrius. Both fathers know each other. I gave them the contact so they can communicate. And it seems like they are pursuing a good relationship and they want to fight. So that's great. Now, he also mentioned that Caleb Plant was another possibility, and I'm okay with that because Caleb Plant had a sparring with Demetrius. Demetrius Andrade, gave him a boxing lesson, so I know that. But the thing that kind of got me a little bit on the turn side was when they mentioned Dave Morrell Jr., it just seems like he didn't want, or he at least, his voice kind of changed a little bit. Like, yeah, like I would like to make that fight, but he doesn't really bring too much to the table right now. He's not a champion and XYZ. And I understand why he's saying that. Dave Morrell Jr. to me is the most dangerous fighter in 168. I think he's a very dangerous fighter. I think he's a fighter that is going to give a lot of problems. In fact, I would have him beat David Benavidez. So the fact that Andrade didn't show too much interest in that fight, or it seemed like when they asked him the question, he wasn't too comfortable because you can see the energy. That said a lot about who Dave Morrell Jr. is. Now, I'm going to put it this way. Demetrius Andrade has to fight either David Benavidez, Jermall Charlo, or minimum a Caleb Plant. But if he's not fighting any of these three fighters, and let's say he chooses some low-tier opponent that nobody knows about, like Desmond Nicholson, which, Nicholson offered himself to fight. They tried to make that fight with Berlanga. Berlanga rejected. Okay. He needs to at least fight. With a Dave Morrell Jr. because I want to see Dave Morrell Jr. call him out as well, because that way you put more pressure on Andrade as well. It doesn't seem like Dave Morrell Jr. is calling him out either, but he needs to fight a good opponent at this point because he's the end of his career. Yes, he's not going to fight against Canelo. Canelo is going to duck Dave Morrell Jr. and David Benavidez. We all know this. He's going to just leave his belts vacant. That's what he does. And it sucks because a lot of these fights should be for a title, for a world title, a real world title. But unfortunately, Canelo has all the belts, so it makes it more difficult for these fighters to get a world title because at the end of the day, you become a good fighter when you earn a world title. You're official. So Andrade, who's had world titles before, he wants to fight somebody like David Benavidez, somebody who's had world titles before. But I think he needs to fight Dave Morrell Jr. if he can't get that. He's supposed to fight David Benavidez, and so if he doesn't get any of these fights, he should be fighting Dave Morrell Jr. I didn't like that, and I didn't like the fact that he also mentioned as a possible fight Edgar Berlanga, because Edgar Berlanga, the guy left Top Rank because he just couldn't, he was not fighting anybody. They were giving him fights. He said he wasn't even ready for a David Morrell or David Benavidez. So I don't want to see this guy, but apparently Canelo's going to fight him, which will be outrageous if that happens. It's not, they're trying to promote it as a mega fight. It's not a mega, it's a garbage fight. But I didn't like that about Demetrius Andrade. So we'll see who's going to fight this. I'm not going to say anything until we see the opponent. But I didn't like the fact that he was like irking more till, he was leaning more towards Edgar Berlanga than a Dave Morrell. That I'm not with that. He should be fighting Dave Morrell Jr. So we'll see. It's up in the air. We don't know. There's no fight. But that's the news for Demetrius Andrade. Interesting podcast. And anyway, we'll see you in the next video. Peace out, and give us a like and subscribe to the best boxing channel in the world in Spanish and English. And visit our webpage, golden.boxing.com, for more news and stories. Deuces, and to the next.